Hey, everyone. Welcome to ACC Breakdown. This is your show of record for ACC football each and every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And with the ACC doing so well in March Madness, what are we looking at? 7 teams in the tournament. 6 are still surviving to the Sweet 16. It's been pretty amazing. And even though, hey, it's considered a basketball conference, we're going to do nothing but football. We continue to, with most of the teams either just getting to spring practice or going to get to spring practice here in just the next day or two. And our best bloggers include this week Mike McDaniel from Inside the ACC. You can see it posted, our show here, and this is our 28th edition. You can see the ACC Breakdown football show each and every Wednesday night posted to Inside the ACC. We've got Jim Hammett on the line from Cardiac Hill covering some Pitt football, and of course a lot going on there with basketball recently with Jamie Dixon on his way to TCU, and Jim doesn't look real happy about that, and I can understand it. A nice run definitely with the Panthers. So if you can put that aside, Jim, if you can put the basketball situation aside, give us a little bit of a rundown from football camp and what you've gathered through a few days, Jim.
Yeah, camp started last week. Obviously the big story with Pitt right now is James Conner. Pitt went through their first few days. You're not allowed to wear pads, and he was out there, and he had chemo, another treatment, 8 of 12, I believe, on Monday, and he was practicing Tuesday. It's just remarkable what he's able to do, what he's been able to accomplish, and he's been an inspiration for his teammates. Kind of anyone that covers a team, that you just look at this kid, and he's going through chemotherapy, but he's also lifting weights, he's running, he's doing drills, he's coaching up his younger teammates. So that is the biggest story right now around Pitt football is you can't doubt him. He's going to be ready in September. He's going to play. He's already told everyone he's going to play, and there's no reason to doubt him. And, the moment when he runs back on the field, it's going to be pretty cool. And even if it's not for the first week, the second week with the Penn State game, that's going to be a huge game. If he's able to lead the team on the field, both sides will be standing and cheering him on for a good 10 minutes at least.
Jim, based on what we knew about his condition, certainly the initial prognosis, and then even just a few months ago, you a bit surprised that he's back out there already?
Yeah, the similar case here is Eric Berry, and he was another one. He's a strong, healthy, young athlete. And the doctors even told him, like the Pittsburgh doctors, that you should stay active. The best way to beat cancer is to, not mope around and not feel sick. It's to attack it kind of in a way. And that's how he's taken that approach. And you look at Eric Berry, he was able to get on the field, I believe, in less than a year himself, and actually was NFL Comeback Player of the Year. So, I think James Conner kind of looked at that for inspiration. I think Eric Berry reached out to him. They talked. So he knows what he's dealing with. He knows what he's up against. And, he's just had a positive outlook from the onset.
Yeah, that would just be amazing to see James Conner back on the field, considering what he's gone through. And it's been an inspiration. And you've been on several times since the diagnosis and kind of outlining the outpouring of support for him from the Pitt Panther community and beyond. And when something like this happens, it goes beyond, obviously, the football program, goes beyond those fans and alumni connected to that program. Everybody gets involved in regards to that support. Doesn't matter who you're rooting for. All right, Mike, Virginia Tech. We talked the big quarterback battle. Really 4 names that we could put on the list, but it's a little bit more narrow of a race than that. Anything else you've got in the Hokies?
Yeah, so we started talking about Tech last week in advance of spring practice. They had their second practice of spring today, so they're still not in full pads, but all indications are coming out of Blacksburg is that the quarterbacks are all splitting reps, as we expected. Brendan Motley, Gerard Evans, Dwayne Lawson, Josh Jackson, of course, Jack Click, who's not expected to really play much into the equation at all. But there are 5 quarterbacks taking reps. There are no real clear-cut indications on who might be the favorite to win the job. Obviously, we're only 2 days into camp, but by all indications, looks like it could be Brendan Motley, Gerard Evans, and Dwayne Lawson in a 3-man race. That's kind of what everybody's expecting. Josh Jackson has all the talent in the world at quarterback, but he's quite young as a freshman, and they'll hopefully put the red shirt on him, something they probably should have done with Dwayne Lawson last season. Some news out of the running back position. Trayvon McMillan obviously is expected to be the starter after his 1,000-plus yard rushing campaign last year for the Hokies. First time they've had a 1,000-yard rusher in a couple of seasons. So they're throwing Trayvon McMillan out there, expecting him to be the starter. Sam Rogers, of course, at fullback. He's in a lot in pass protection, catches a lot of passes out of the backfield, runs the ball quite a bit for the Hokies as well. At least he did under Frank Beamer. Marshawn Williams, who really starred 2 seasons ago when he was a freshman, then missed last season with recovering from ACL surgery. He had another procedure on his knee about a month ago. He's missing spring practice. His status as far as how strong that knee will be this summer in the workouts and then, of course, in fall camp kind of remains to be seen. Not really sure if Marshawn Williams will even make a full recovery in time for the opener against Liberty in early September. So Shy McKenzie, another guy who kind of broke out a couple seasons ago before he tore his ACL, he's back to full strength after his surgery, and he was kind of laboring through the year last year, but he looks like he's back to full strength and will definitely be a guy who figures to play into the fold at the running back position in the fall. So a little bit on the running back front, a little bit of news, but other than that, not a ton going on in Blacksburg. They're still just kind of getting their feet under them, but there's a lot of excitement due to the fact that practices are finally getting underway with Justin Fuente at the helm for the Hokies.
Yeah, and so I'll latch on to the last name you just mentioned, Justin Fuente. So Frank Beamer in place, everybody who's under 30, 35 years old. If you start watching football when you're 8, 10, 12 years old, if you follow ACC football, Virginia Tech, you know nothing but Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech. So I gathered from our conversations, Mike, that everybody was pretty pleased with the Justin Fuente hire. What he did at Memphis hasn't been done at Memphis in years and years and years, and in some cases, in some perspective, never. Anything that you can gather from the difference in how you may not see it displayed now, obviously not a gameplay, not the entirety of spring practice, but the difference in the way the football program may be run under Fuente?
Well, I think the defense is going to be very similar. Obviously, Justin Fuente retained Bud Foster, a longtime defensive coordinator under Frank Beamer's staff. As far as changes from the Beamer era to now, beginning Justin Fuente's tenure in Blacksburg, I think what you're going to see is a lot of the same principles that Frank Beamer instilled to bring the football program to where it is today will continue into the Fuente era. However, the injection of youth that Justin Fuente brings to the table cannot be understated. This was a staff under Frank Beamer that really over the last few seasons, the team really struggled due to the fact that, a good portion of the fan base thought that this coaching staff was a little bit out of touch with what was happening in college football. The offense seemed like it was dated at times. The defense really struggled with injuries for the most part. But Bud Foster, we all know the type of defensive coordinator he is. So there were a lot of complaints, I would say. A lot of fans were kind of spoiled by the Frank Beamer era in totality, except for the last few seasons where Tech's kind of been on this up and down kind of ceiling of 6 wins and anywhere in between, some questionable losses, of course, have come and gone. Duke and Wake Forest over the last couple of years come to mind as games that the Hokies definitely let slip away. But then Tech was still getting to bowl games and winning bowl games, so the fans weren't really sure how to take it when Frank Beamer finally announced his retirement. But once he did, it definitely was the right decision. It was time for him to move on, and he leaves on good terms with a school that he brought to prominence on the football field that really hadn't been done prior to Frank Beamer. There was no real sustained success before he got to Blacksburg, and as soon as he got there, he really built the program into what it is today. So it's kind of bittersweet. It's a very interesting feel around Blacksburg, but it's exciting because it's something new and a coach that's proven himself at TCU as an offensive coordinator. And then, of course, at Memphis as a head coach. I mean, Justin Fuente is a guy who has absolutely proven that he can recruit and he can coach at a high level and bring programs to prominence that you may not have ever seen really succeeding. So it's definitely a very good hire and one that the fan base is definitely excited about.
I was really excited to see the defense. When we were talking defensive football, Virginia Tech going into last season, I just thought, wow, the injuries that they suffered in 2014, most of those guys were back. They were healthy. It was a very, very young defense. And what they did against Ohio State in Columbus the previous season, and with the NFL talent they had at D tackle, D end, the two NFL corners, I just expected so much. And unfortunately, some of it was subpar play, tons of injuries. Obviously, Kendall Fuller did not stay in the field. And you've highlighted the coaching up of the linebackers in the past and taking 3 stars and putting together very productive linebacking units, and what the expectations for that is typically. And that was a solid area of the field, but it just didn't turn out. Jim, I want to hit you with this, and then Mike, I'll hit you basically with the same thing, because the programs are from the standpoint, the culmination of this may be completely different in regards to the ends to the means, but basically these two programs, talking Pitt and Virginia Tech, in a similar situation in regards to just the level of the program where it is right now, like top 30 to 35 programs basically. But you're in a division where Miami seems to be potentially the big favorite, and in recent years though, they haven't gone to the championship game. Duke recruiting at a level that they never have reached. So that takes 3 or 4 years to take hold. So I wouldn't expect this one class to make a huge difference. Georgia Tech, of course, broke out 2 years ago, and then they fall back to 3 wins and only 1 in the ACC. So, Jim, what do you think is the legitimate shot for Pitt to make a serious run in this division next year?
I think they have a lot coming back. You look at the offense. You have Nate Peterman in his second year as a starter at quarterback. You have about 5 linemen coming back. You have a great stable of running backs. So you look at James Conner, then you look at the ACC Rookie of the Year, Quadri Olison. The big questions right now are pass catchers, wide receiver, and tight end. You're losing J.B. Holtz at tight end, and obviously you're losing Tyler Boyd at receiver. So right there, that's been the big story of camp also. Once you get past James Conner, you're looking at, from a football standpoint, you're looking at, well, who's winning the receiver battle right now? And there's a couple names right now. So right there, on offense, that's the issue. In defense, the defensive line's a little bit of an issue. They have a big transfer that is eligible this year. We're all real excited about. We've heard about him, is Dwayne Hendricks from Tennessee, big 6'5", former 4-star. Josh Conklin, he was interviewed the other day, and kind of putting it mildly, the defense coordinator said, he looks like an SEC defensive end. That's basically how he put it. So, everyone's kind of excited about him, and everyone's excited about the recruiting class. Pitt closed very strong. They finished in the top 30. They got us the star DeMar Hamlin from right in Pittsburgh Central Catholic, right down the street. And he might, come in and start and kind of be that star alongside Jordan Whitehead in the defensive backfield. So there's some optimism. There's about 7 starters on each side of the ball. Pitt went 8-4 in the regular season. I mean, they showed improvement last year. There's, people are excited about the program. They're recruiting better. So everyone's feeling pretty good. I mean, obviously Miami's tough. The whole division's tough. There's not a lot of separation from top to bottom. And there's a lot of good coaches. 7 coaches have a case to, be the best in the division in any one year.
Jim, it could be argued that it's the worst division in college football, but I think we'd also want to say that it's the toughest to handicap, because every other division in college football across the board has the heavyweights. You can go across the board. It also probably has the least light touches of any division. To its credit, even Virginia's in games, competing against good teams, winning 3 games in the ACC, 3-5. That was the bottom team in that division, went 3-5 against a very difficult schedule in conference. The other division, sure, it has the heavyweights, but it also has Wake and Syracuse. And Boston College this past season as well. So we don't have Dan to kick around right now, but Mike, Virginia Tech could find itself back in the division race after a few years where it wasn't quite able to keep up.
Yeah, definitely. And it's wide open, really. I mean, people want to say that Miami's got a great shot to win the Coastal, but they don't have any better of a shot, in my estimation, than a Virginia Tech, than a North Carolina, than a Pittsburgh. I just don't really – I understand the excitement because Mark Richt is coming into the fold. He's a guy that recruits well. He's a good coach. But outside of Brad Kaya at quarterback, They got a couple of guys on the offensive side of the ball, but all of these guys need to play to their ability, and they haven't, with the exception of Brad Kaya, who's been very good. These players on defense that were so highly recruited just haven't played up to their potential. So I don't really see a clear favorite in this division like we've all kind of alluded to here. With Virginia Tech, they're returning actually more talent on offense than they are on defense. Sure, you're bringing back Kenny Kane, a defensive end who, had a little bit of a disappointing season last year, but he still played pretty well. He didn't break out like most expected him to, which is a big reason why he's back for his senior season. But when looking at Tech's depth chart, obviously you're losing Kendall Fuller, a cornerback. The one thing that we really need to watch for with Virginia Tech in particular is how healthy is Brandon Faison going to be. He's a guy that when he's on the field is a borderline shutdown corner. At his best, he's a shutdown corner, but even when he's not at his best, he's got such a big frame. It's 6'1". You don't see a lot of defensive backs on the college level anymore with size like that, except for the better corners. In these big conferences, Mackenzie Alexander at Clemson was a good example. He was a pretty nice sized corner. Jalen Ramsey as well. So Brandon Faison being 6'1" and being able to run like he's able to when he's healthy. If Tech is able to have him in the fold this fall, that will be huge. He's missing camp because of a knee injury for Tech, but in the defensive backfield, Virginia Tech's got Chuck Clark coming back. They got Terrell Edmonds, Adonis Alexander, Greg Stroman. These are guys that are young, but have played enough in meaningful parts of games over the past couple seasons that it won't be a brand new unit. I mean, these are guys bringing tangible playing experience to the table. So really, while the offense returns a lot of the playmakers outside of quarterback, which, kind of remains to be seen at this point, I think the defense has just as many playmakers that have playing experience, but not necessarily starting experience. And, Bud Foster is going to have his group playing at a high level if everybody stays healthy, that's for sure. So, the Coastal's going to be wide open. And right now, until we kind of have some more clarity for a number of teams about who's going to be playing key positions, it's kind of hard to handicap, like you said, Mark.
Yeah, our buddy Cam Underwood comes on from the State of the U. He was on last week, and I will term Cam typically as reasonably optimistic. He's not crazy optimistic. We're winning a national championship every year, but he likes to look at the bright side, look at the cup half full, but he's very reasonable, and he still cites, even though he's ecstatic about Mark Richt, the recruiting classes have been generally top 15 to top 20 prior to this year, and Richt brought in about a class in the low teens. The offensive line is still a huge concern, and Brad Kaya needs an offensive line more than most quarterbacks. Not that he's not mobile in the pocket, but he's not going to take off and burn anyone. He needs the offensive line, and that was a huge issue last year. Besides Stacy Coley, they don't have a proven wide receiver coming back. And I'm looking over the cornerback and defensive secondary for Miami, and they lost, three really productive players led by Deion Bush, and Corn Elder is kind of the proven guy at cornerback. And aside from that, they have question marks at that position as well in a division where you're going to see teams throwing the football around. Obviously, the principal team being North Carolina with a new quarterback, possibly Mitch Trubisky. And, of course, they're going to have to see, talking about the Canes, Florida State as well, and all that speed and athleticism, and if they can figure things out in the passing game. They're going to be challenged. So, yeah, I'm more intrigued in this. I think that this is the most difficult division in college football to handicap. All right, want to remind everyone that ACC Breakdown comes your way every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We bring on the very best bloggers in the conference, Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC, Jim Hammett this week from Cardiac Hill representing a little Pitt football for us, breaking down the Panthers. So, guys, unless you have anything else, I think we've done some work this week.
Yeah. I wanted to –
Go ahead, Jim.
Sure,
I was going to bring up, we're talking about Miami and the excitement there. Which team in the division, because we're talking about the parity of it, is least excited about their coach right now? It seems like everyone has a new coach or a coach they like. Georgia Tech?
I think with Paul Johnson, these fans are at such a high when they're playing well, but then last year they were so underwhelming. I think Georgia Tech would have to be the team because there's been so much turnover that nobody's really talked about over not only this past season, but the last couple seasons. The fact that there's been so much turnover in this division alone. You look at Bronco Mendenhall at Virginia, Fuente at Virginia Tech, obviously. Narduzzi is going to be in his second year at Pittsburgh. Mark Richt at Miami. There are just so many different variables in this Coastal Division. A lot of new faces on coaching staffs. A lot of good young players and new players, really, because you're bringing in guys, not necessarily from the same part of the country all the time. You got guys coming in. Bronco Mendenhall is a great example. He's been recruiting out in Utah at BYU, and he's all of a sudden coming back to the East Coast. He's going to be coaching Virginia. You got a different recruiting class, different type of recruiting class, maybe more players from the West Coast. So it's going to be different talent levels in the Coastal Division that we haven't seen in quite some time. It's going to be very interesting to see how these teams perform here over the next year or two.
Anything else, Jim?
Sounds good to me.
All right, guys. ACC Breakdown again. We do this every week on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. We come your way on Blab. I've been doing this for 3 or 4 weeks. Seems to work out very well. But you can always catch the show at Mark Rogers TV on YouTube and also at Inside the ACC with Mike McDaniel's platform there. All right, Jim, Mike, appreciate the time.
All right, thanks, Mark.